I think the course was actually a really pivotal moment for me because I had seen people say this, that once you sell something online and make money from like a digital asset, or even just making money online in general, it like opens your brain to that being a possibility. I put the course out and I remember within like a month, I don't know, I had like $10,000 in revenue from it. I was like, this is why? Like,
right.
this
didn't even like click in your head. You're like, holy crap.
How did I just birth $10,000 into existence, right? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
What's going on, guys? My name is Ryan Snod. It rhymes with odd, and welcome to the Rhymes with Odd podcast. Today we have a great guest with you guys. This is Lee Robinson, coming all the way from Granger, which is like 5 minutes away from where we're at today.
A lot of travel to get here today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Lee is would you say software developer, software engineer? Him and I have known each other for a while, and we kind of started in the content space together, and I've known him for many years, and he has a very cool story about kind of how he got into his line of work and all the different things he's been doing. So today we're going to talk about careers, personal stuff, just kind of like the story of Lee. So Lee, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
I love your space.
Thank you. Yeah, Lee got one of the first like early looks at this. He and his wife came in, and she's a real estate agent, so I wanted to get her opinion on like, what do you think? What should we do? So yeah, props to my wife, Paige, for putting this together.
She did a great job.
Yeah, like the design looks really nice too. So, so for the people that don't know a little bit about who you are, can you tell people like who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I work in kind of an interesting field, which is this intersection between software engineering or programming and content creation. So it's been a 10 plus year journey to actually land on this kind of niche, but I work for a company called Versel. It's a tech startup. I work remotely, so I work from my house in Granger, and I help teach and educate and grow a community of developers who use the tools that we make. And in the process of doing that, I make, blog posts, I make videos, I make tutorials, conference talks, go around the country and internationally and speak about some of the stuff that we build.
Sure. That's super dope. I think it's cool too to see like where you've landed, because when I first met you, we were like making videos together. Like we did your car hype videos, like my first time I ever met you. And you were doing like content on the side just for fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a hobby like that, and guitar and all the other stuff that you like to do, drones and whatnot. So talk a little bit about like how, now that you're in this role where you can kind of do both, like how does it scratch both of those itches for you?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I had been doing content on the side for a long time just because I thought it was fun. I like doing photography. I like doing videography. It just kind of flexed that creative muscle. And I kind of kept it that way for many, many years until I kind of stumbled into, there's actually a way that I can do this and get paid and also do my normal part of my job as well too. There's this weird mixture of the two things together. And that was in my specific industry, it's called developer relations, where it's like, hey, you're this interface, you're building these relationships with the developers. You're trying to help them succeed at their job, because the key thing with programming is that you're basically consistently learning forever. There's always some new thing. There's always some new tool that you got to figure out. So for all of these programmers, they've just been trained. We need to keep up. We need to keep up to date with these new tools, stay on top of our game, whether it's interviewing or learning how to use these tools to make a website faster or their product faster. So there's a huge opportunity and demand for education and just teaching people how to use the latest and greatest things, and hopefully a way that's easy to understand as well too. So it's been an interesting trajectory for me to land here, because I didn't really even know when I started, 10 plus years ago, I didn't even know that this existed. Like, I didn't even know that this was an opportunity for a career. When I got started, it was just a normal software engineer. I just wanted to take the skills I'd learned in college and go make money from it. And then, down the line somewhere, I figured out that I could kind of combine the different skills of both videography and content creation and writing, and even to like a smaller extent, music as well too, into my actual full-time job.
Sure. That's super cool. And I think it's cool like seeing kind of how your trajectory started, because like you said, so you went to Iowa State. Yep. What was your degree at the time?
Computer engineering.
Okay. And was that like, did you know you wanted to be in tech? Was it like hands-on, like actual writing software? Like what drew you to it initially?
Yeah. When I was just about to finish up high school, I was kind of between graphic design, music, or something with computers. Like that was really all I had made up my mind in yet, which is all over the board, of course, because I worked as a graphic designer for a little bit in high school, like designing t-shirts. And I liked music, but I didn't have a traditional music background. Like I didn't play in the band in high school. I just like, oh, this could be fun. So then I kind of realized, okay, what are the best chances I could actually land a job here? Probably something with computers. Like it seems like there's a good demand for that. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start learning how to program. I'm going to get more into the underlying software that makes up computers. And when I started in college in computer engineering, they kind of let you choose your own adventure. It's like, do you want to go down the hardware route? Do you want to like build hardware for computers? Or do you want to do the software route and, do programming and build the programs that people use, build the After Effects or the Premieres of the world? And I kind of gravitated more towards the software side. It took me probably a year and a half or 2 years to kind of figure that out. But then once I did, especially with building websites, like that was really what I liked the most. Because there's always been this attraction for me of the fact that you can send your friends a link to a website and it's like your space on the internet. Like you can put whatever you want here. I don't know if that comes from like the MySpace days or something. Like that was like your spot. Yep. But I've always really liked that. So that's kind of what got me into it.
Sure. That's super cool. Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, like seeing again, how your career has kind of gone from company to company and the different things and kind of how you've merged it all together. Walk people through a little bit of like kind of what was going on with you with your career and your life when you were kind of you were up in Ames at a large company there. You made the shift to a large grocery chain here and kind of building the apps. What was kind of that point when you were looking at doing other things, traveling, like how this all works into your lifestyle?
Yeah. So first off, I did a couple internships while I was still in college, kind of scoping out the industry and seeing what things I liked and what things I didn't like. And that kind of led into me doing my first full-time job out of college at Workiva in Ames. And I was there for about 3 years. And it was really interesting because I've been really fortunate to have been able to have worked in a lot of different sizes of companies and also different industries. Yeah. So it's given me good visibility into like, what are all the things that are out there? Kind of helped me narrow in, I think. And I mean, it took 10 years to get there, but it helped me figure out kind of what I actually wanted to do. Right. So the first job, I got a lot of experience, but it kind of left me wanting to get more hands-on. And that was what essentially led me towards Hy-Vee, which is where I got to help build some of the first the work that we did on Aisles Online for our website, making that better, and some of the first work that we did on the mobile app as well too.
And for the people not from the Midwest, it's like a grocery chain that's like you can online shop for your groceries basically on the app. Yep.
It was and it was really interesting to me because I was joining kind of a small team at the time, was really sparking this innovation for, really old established company who was getting more into the digital side, getting more into their online presence. So it was cool to kind of help build that from the ground up and get to work with some really smart people.
Sure.
And also kind of funny too that the timing of it was really interesting with it happening during COVID because everyone needed groceries, right? Everyone needed to order groceries. They didn't want to go into the store. So it was all kind of leading up to that moment where I was like, wow, I'm really glad that this infrastructure exists. Not only did I use it all the time, but it was really like fulfilling for my career as well too, to use something that a lot of people depended on and needed in that time. So that was really fun. And kind of at that time, kind of in between the transition of going from my job in Ames at Workiva, going to Hy-Vee, we were kind of talking about this before we went on the pod, but I was just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. And it was a series of not only my career choices, but also like personal life choices. So I've been somebody who really likes to travel. Like I've always enjoyed it. Probably because when I was younger, my family always liked to travel and do stuff as well too. We'd like go out to Colorado and go, check out national parks or go to different places around the United States, lots of road trips. And I had been traveling a little bit and long story short, basically got out of a long relationship. And I decided that I wanted to take some time to go travel abroad and kind of just figure things out myself, kind of see how I was feeling. So went away for about 3 or 4 months and just was trying to figure out what do I want to do in my career? Do I want to live in Iowa? Just take some time to self-reflect a little bit as well.
Because where were the places you went? You were all over the world, man. I was like seeing Snapchats and Instagram, like he's in Bali and now he's in like Europe. And like, where did you all go?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I had heard a lot of good things about Bali from my friends who had traveled abroad and who had done a lot of remote work. Maybe even before getting into that, one of the nice things about working in a field like ours is that you can do a lot of work remotely, and specifically for programmers too. Like, I mean, you don't necessarily have to be in the bounds of an office to do your job on a computer. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this. My work at the time was like, yeah, we'll let you go do this. And I went to Bali because I had heard really good things about it. Turns out it was very great, very amazing space, and I met some really cool people. I traveled with a group of people who were like, like-minded people who could do remote work. So I wasn't
digital nomads, so to speak.
Yes, the digital nomads. So I wasn't just out by myself, wandering around, which was nice. And then spent some time in Australia as well too, moving around in the country there, and also went down to Tasmania for 1 weekend, which was pretty cool too. I had always wanted to go there as well. So yeah, it was great.
Sure, because I think it's interesting. People always talk about, oh, I'd love to travel, love to do all this stuff. What was kind of the thing that drew you to do that? Because I mean, previously you probably had worked in and out. This is all pre-COVID too, so it's like
it's
now
crazy.
It's like the norm. Like, oh yeah, Zoom calls and stuff. But like that was your life before the world was forced to do that. Probably 5-10 years prior to what naturally would have happened. You were already like on the front lines of doing this stuff. What was that like?
It was one of those moments where I realized that if I didn't do it now, I would have regretted not doing it. And especially the fact that I was able to keep my job and do it, which I think is a luxury. Like the fact that I could actually do my job while not being situated in the Midwest. I was like, well, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of solve both of these things at once. So the timing made sense. I like to travel. I was like, you know what? We're just going to go with it. And, now looking back on it, it is kind of funny. Like you mentioned, like it was good for me to get experience to working remotely because now I work remotely full time. And it was good for me to get to experience some of those travel things that, normally you wouldn't really get to do, or it's harder to plan like 4 months to just go away and do stuff without, some serious lead time. So it was great.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I know I remember seeing like, you were really into the travel vlog stuff. I mean, not for good reason too. You went to some crazy places. What's like some of your most memorable stuff that you captured on video, whether it's drone or otherwise, while you're out and about?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a whole another interesting part of this too, which is it also allowed me to scratch the creative itch as well too, because so much of photography and videography is just being exposed to things that gave me inspiration. And travel gives me a lot of inspiration because you see new sights, you have new experiences, new cultures. You're like, I want to try to capture this and put something behind it. I get to meet new people. I want to see these people and turn it into something I can look back on and, in 6 years, 10 years, look and be like, wow, I really remember that experience. So it was like the perfect footage for the story that I was trying to tell. And I also just really like to watch people who did vlogging on YouTube or people who did this full time. I had a lot of inspiration from those people. I was like,
probably Sam Colder, I would guess.
Yeah, he's great.
Matt Como, maybe a little bit.
Yes, they're fantastic. And I was like, I know I'm not going to be exactly like them, of course, but I got a lot of inspiration from them. I was like, I'm going to try to make something that's even 10% or 5% of what they have, just to kind of make that creative itch. And that was really fun. Yeah.
Sure. Because I remember you'd showed me a clip, one of the first times we had met, where you were flying your drone. Was it in Iceland or was it in Norway?
Norway.
Where the wind like almost took it to like God knows where. Like walk me through that like terrible crisis of a drone crash that almost happened.
One of the interesting things about I take my drone with me pretty much wherever I travel to is that I've had lots of near drone death experiences. Like I'm surprised that I haven't had one completely bust just yet. It's actually been a miracle. But in Norway, I was on a trip with a couple of my friends, and we were doing this day-long hike. So you wake up, I don't know, it was like 5 a.m. You basically hike all day because you have to, it's a there and back hike. So you probably took, 8 hours to get there and then 8 hours back. Really long hike. But we finally got out there and, we hiked up to the top of this mountain, but it didn't really feel like you were on top of a mountain because there was more of like a flat spot towards the peak. So I was like, oh, okay, like I'll pull out my drone here. I'll get a cool shot. And like as soon as drone got up, as soon as it went off the edge. Like you obviously couldn't see, but there was a huge current there of wind that just made it extremely hard for me to control the drone. So then I was like, like there's like a group of probably 5 or 10 other people who did this hike who are watching me just like sweating because I think that I'm going to lose all of my Of course, I didn't back up any of my footage either which was a terrible idea. So in my head, I'm thinking, oh no, I'm going to lose all of the footage I just shot the last couple of days on that one SD card that was on my drone.
All your memories are flying through the air with no control. Yeah.
They're gone. Somehow managed to like twist it back, and then it flew over and crashed into a snowbank. And I still thought that it was going to be busted, but at least I would have my SD card. But it actually managed to still work. So I got super lucky.
Sure. That's crazy. Because I know like with the content side, I mean, that sounded more of like a hobby for you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I was just curious, like when did you always know you're going to stay in software? Was there a part of you that was like, oh, if like I keep traveling and like say I grew on YouTube or like, was that even something that you considered for like a way to make money or a career path?
Yeah, it was interesting. I had definitely thought about, okay, well, what if I do content full time? You know, what if I keep exploring what I had been doing part-time for photography or videography and take it into something that was more full-time. So whether it was doing things around travel vlogs or doing wedding videography or doing events or concerts or just any ad hoc request that people have for any type of content, I think if I go back in time, there is a world where I made that choice. The hardest part for me was I wasn't ready to, and I didn't really want to give up programming. Like that was my first love, right? Like I didn't want to give that up. I still wanted to find a way to do both. And I kind of realized that I had 2 things I had to figure out. If I was going to do that, it was no longer going to be a hobby. It was going to be a career, which is fine. But in doing that, how did I combine that with programming? I was like, well, I can't really do that right now. So I'll just keep like doing my normal career, and maybe I'll find a way to still do some of the stuff on the side and have fun with it. And then I kind of slowly ramped down doing like, well, I'm not going to book any weddings, or I'm not going to, doing this extra stuff because I'm going to focus more on the career stuff. Well, then in a weird roundabout way, those 2 worlds kind of collided where I was able to scratch the creative itch in doing content and doing videography, but also doing it for my job as well too. Sure.
Because did you find this role that you're in with Versel, or did they kind of come to you and say, hey, we think you'd be perfect for this?
Yeah, it was interesting. So in that transition period where I had started to kind of ramp down doing things for hire on a side gig for videography and start doing more stuff, just focus on my career, I was doing it under my own name, under my own brand, right? So I was creating content to help teach developers, but it was just like, hey, Lee's publishing tutorials. Like I wasn't doing it for any company.
Sure. And your YouTube, or did you have a course, or what was the platform?
Yeah, I did YouTube and I did 2 courses. And I think the course was actually a really pivotal moment for me, because I had seen people say this, that once you sell something online and make money from like a digital asset, or even just making money online in general, it like opens your brain to that being a possibility. I put the course out, and I remember within like a month, I don't know, I had like $10,000 in revenue from it. I was like, this is why, like,
right. This doesn't even like click in your head. You're like, holy crap.
How did I just birth $10,000 into existence, right? Like it just doesn't make sense. And then I kind of realized, like, wow, there's actually a lot of possibility here in this space for teaching developers. In my head, it's very easy to make it seem a lot more complicated than what it really is. But in reality, it was like, okay, this is like $100 thing or a $50 thing. I need like 100 people. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really need that many people to buy this course. And that's going to be a decent chunk of money to come in for me. So I got to think about how I do my marketing and how I tell people about this course. So I had started to do that a little bit on the side, because I was like, hey, I might make some good side money from doing this. And it's a good combination of my skills. Well, at the same time, I was teaching about specific web technology on how to build websites. And one of the companies behind one of those technologies, Versel, some of the people there reached out and they said, hey, we've seen that you've been doing a lot of stuff in this space. You seem like a person who understands the technology well. That's really important. And can teach people and sell them on the vision of what we're trying to build. We're this really small company of like 25 people, 30 people at the time. Are you interested in maybe coming and joining us? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, this is a company. They're not in Iowa. It's a San Francisco-based company. 30-person startup, pretty small company. So it was definitely a risk. But I liked the people I talked to, I liked the vision of where it was going. So I was like, okay, I think there's something here. It's definitely a risk from the more, I guess, traditional established Hy-Vee of the world, where you know what your paycheck is going to be. It's coming in every week. It's pretty cut and dry versus like, oh, I'm going to this startup. They might not exist in a year. Like I might have to figure out something else.
Sure.
And ultimately that turned out to be a good decision. When I joined, we were about 30 people and we now have about 400 people. So we've grown quite a bit, and I've been able to grow quite a bit as well too at the company and hire a couple teams of people who are effectively doing the work that I was doing by myself before. So it's been good.
What's been the biggest adjustment to now? You would say probably like, would you say your executive leadership or just mid-tier leadership? Like how would you describe that jump to where now you're not the guy in there coding manually, like you're helping lead teams and teach people, and like that's a whole different skill set. What's that adjustment been like for you?
Yeah, so when I started, I was basically the sole person doing this job, and then going throughout the first year, I decided, okay, now we need to grow a team. We need to hire more people to kind of outsource or to build the function that's doing the work that I was doing previously. So kind of hired one team of people, and then the next year brought on another team of people and kind of moved into like a middle management layer essentially. And then just about a year ago, I joined our executive team to try to, I guess, spread impact further in the company, which has been a good challenge, definitely completely different than anything I had done before. But it's been a good opportunity for me to evolve as a leader, as well as to understand the workings of how to run a successful business and how to have a successful company. Just seeing, like getting to work with smart people and seeing how they handle problems as well too has been really interesting for me as well. And to help, the managers on my team now grow their teams and to help that infect the rest of the company as well too.
Sure. That's got to be kind of a cool transition over, because you kind of just go from being like, here's my tasks, here's what I got to do, to now you're like, okay, now I gotta like step back and look at the whole vision of the whole company and like where are things going and where do we need to focus our attention? Like that's a whole different skill set, which is really interesting too.
Yeah, what I've tried to do to make sure that I don't lose touch of what got me here, I guess, is that I still try to keep the hands on the keyboard as much as I can as well too. Like I'm trying to set the vision, trying to set the leadership for our teams, but I still want to make sure I don't get too far removed from what it actually takes to be successful in the role. So I still try, at 5% of my time, 4% of my time to still be a creator, to still make stuff, to still flex those muscles, because I think in a lot of ways it's leading by example too, to show the people in my teams, like, this is what I think good looks like. This is what I think is a way of expressing creativity and create content that developers can learn from. And it's even the little things that you don't realize that you've kind of picked up over time, not only in doing content, but in just learning how to do public speaking or how to talk to developers. Because for some of the people that I hired to join my team, they might have had some of those skills, but then they were working to grow the rest of the skills too. So a lot of opportunity to help coach those people and get better at like, hey, here's how you give a really engaging public talk, and here's how you design your slides, or here's how you talk to a camera and not have it sound robotic, right?
Sure.
Like here's how you do it where, you're not reading off a script and it's super obvious.
Sure. Well, it's got to be interesting too, because a lot of people in your space are probably those ultra introvert, like just focused on what they're trying to do. I always think of like the guy from the Internship movie from with Google, where he's got his headphones on. He's like laughing, like he's got a weird, like people like that are just brilliant at what they do, but being able to communicate with those people and communicate with others. Cause I know like when I worked at the agency before I left to do my own job, that was my whole job, was to like take a corporate client's like white shirt and tie vision and then communicate it to a creative who's got like a hoodie on and a bunch of tattoos and is like, yeah, let's do this. So it's like those two different people talk differently, but they're trying to just say the same stuff. So it's always kind of interesting to like dance the line of communication that route. So
yeah, sometimes I describe my role as essentially just bridging this gap between the technical and the non-technical, basically, because you have a little bit of understanding of both, and then you're kind of helping bridge the gap for people.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting to know a little bit more too about the tech field opportunities, because you talk a lot about that in like, obviously it's a recruitment role as well as a leadership role. Like, where is tech going in the future, and what's like, kind of like you said, tech was kind of a booming thing back 10 years ago when you were in college. What is it like now, and what are some of the opportunities out there for people to learn about?
Yeah, there's basically been three different generational shifts in tech. Let's say like there was Web 1.0, which was the internet becoming a thing and everyone getting online.
Is that like 90s, like early, late 90s, something like?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then that kind of had a massive peak. And then there was what they call the dot-com bust in like 2000s, where it was like, this is going to change the world forever. And they're like, well, let's reset expectations a little bit here. So that was kind of the bottom of that for a little bit. That was kind of like the first wave. The second wave was companies reimagining themselves as an internet business. So even though they might have been online, it's kind of like the analogy would be the Ubers and Lyfts versus a taxi. Uber and Lyft are internet cloud first companies. They're not just a taxi service that also has a website, right? So that's kind of been like the second generation. And now the third generation is kind of happening right now, which is basically there's been a ton of advancements in AI and the underlying tools that enable these companies to do things that previously would never be possible. And you can kind of think about the AI innovations as taking everything of the first and second iterations of the web. And now a robot knows all of that context. It knows every single thing that's ever happened online. And all I got to do is just type in a message to it and I can ask it any question. So it's kind of a pivotal change for the future of any business on the web, really.
Sure. So from somebody that's in the weeds with it, tell me, Lee, is Terminator real? Are we all going to die? Are robots going to kill all of us? Or is there a future for humans in this industry?
It's so funny because when you talk to some of these large language models, the ChatGPTs of the world, you talk to these systems, it feels like you're talking to a real human. It's like there's no way that it's this intelligent. This has got to be like a sentient being here. There's something strange going on here. And they've really managed to get so good that they get out of that uncanny valley of like, this feels like it's a real person, even if it's not, even if it's just trained on all existing knowledge of what people have said online. So I would say I'm overall like pretty cautiously optimistic about everything that's happening with AI, because it's kind of like when you are an expert in a field and you're kind of in the top band, let's say like the top 5% of knowledge of, let's say, videography, it's pretty easy to tell the difference between the top 5% and the bottom 95%. And the top 5%, there's a lot of little things that you need to know that you realize you're not just going to automate that away. Like there's a big gap actually between Steven Spielberg and, some other average producer or director. That's kind of like where AI is at right now, is that it's definitely good and it's definitely helping advance people in succeeding at whatever task they want. Maybe it's making them, edit their videos faster. Maybe it's helping them write their scripts better. Maybe it's helping them code faster. But it's pretty obvious too as well for the people who really dig into it, like this can't do everything yet. Now the question, and this is what kind of puzzles all of the leading AI experts or the technology experts, is, well, how fast does that happen? Is that like 30 minutes away? Is that like 30 days away?
Should I start writing my resume is what they're trying to say? Like,
which sparks a lot of the conversation of like, is AI going to take all of our jobs? Take our jobs. Like because they don't know. Like they don't know what that time frame is. If it's, if it's 2 years, then they get a little bit nervous. If it's 30 years, then it's like, well, maybe not. And I think the framing that's been helpful for me, I think we kind of share the same viewpoint on it. It's not that it removes or takes jobs, but it just enhances and makes a lot of jobs easier. And some of those, they might look completely different. Like the role of how you edit videos, it just might look completely different. You're not necessarily stitching together all of the different clips from your multicam setup. Now maybe you're doing something that's a bit more creative, or you're spending that video editing energy on something else that's a different project needs to be done. Or you're just cranking out way more projects because you now have this like AI enhanced superpowers.
Sure. Well, and I think my perspective on it's unique because I was at my mom's wedding a couple weeks ago, and my uncle is super into development. He does like software SaaS products for dance studios. So he builds like the back end, like the CRM and like the payment solution, all that stuff, right? So him and I had a very intoxicated, very long conversation about this, and it was interesting because he was asking like, well, Ryan, how's this changing your industry? And to your point, from a video editor standpoint, yes, there is AI tools that can edit videos. I just showed you one earlier on how we'll edit this podcast automatically. Yeah. But to the point we talked about, it's not, it takes the job away from the Fiverr editor that I would hire for $150 to cut my video for me. So that puts money back in my pocket. Two, it gives me the ability to have my own show now because I don't have to have 3 hours to edit my one show. I can do it in 10 minutes. So now I can put out more content. I can help more people and not sacrifice the precious time that I have. But the other piece too is that if it's mindless editing, that's not what people pay me for. It's the strategy, the scripting, and not to mention that, you know, there's all the other things, like you said, the extra polish that goes into making a video good for a business. Now that there's so much just in my industry that alone, but I think it's going to change a lot of stuff because people were complained about, you know, robots coming into manufacturing, and now they can 10x the output with one operator to run all of them.
Yep.
That does take away jobs, but it's also innovation. And now you can drastically increase profits. So there's the tug and pull. I think it's a good and bad thing, but it's also the thing I would tell people if they're listening is like, diversify your skill set so you're not just a commodity. Because if you were a commodity before, this is just the wake up call that you needed to be like,
yeah,
I can only do basic code and now a robot can do it for me. I don't know if I have a job tomorrow. It's like, well, maybe enhance your skills, like learn a new language, or, I mean, you know, all that stuff. I don't know the ins and outs of everything, but.
Well, I mean, the nice thing too is that the AI is essentially the best tutor that you've ever had, right? You can ask it any question whenever you want. It's going to give you a really thoughtful answer. You can ask it follow-up questions. You can have it create curriculums for you. So the only thing stopping somebody from really leveling up in becoming smarter about whatever their specific industry is just taking the time and the motivation to do it. Because if you're in that position, let's say you were doing kind of mindless video editing and you realize that you want to learn a bit more, like you can use AI to help learn more about the foundations of what makes a great video, or you can find ways to then shift your energy to, you know, make revenue in other ways so that you can take new courses or do new training to get better at other parts of video editing. So it's like a redistribution almost.
Sure. Absolutely. I think it'll be also interesting because the more AI does this type of advancement, it's going to open up more, you know, remote working. There's going to be more industries that can go do that because now you don't have to be there in the office, like all the different stuff. I think it's going to change the whole kind of landscape as we know it, which will be super interesting. In terms of your specific job, how is AI one way that it's made it better and one way it's made it worse? If I can put you on the spot here, I think it'd be cool to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think one thing that a lot of the current AI models are pretty well suited for is actually summarizing content. Works pretty well. So sometimes if there's something I'm just trying to get like a TLDR, like a quick summary, too long didn't read, I just like drop it in there and it'll give me a quick summary. Or this is a fun one, but like sometimes I ask it to explain me concepts like I'm 5 and then like I'm 10 and then like I'm a beginner level programmer, and it'll like see the difference in how they explain it, which is interesting to help kind of fill in the gaps in my understanding of something. I would probably say I've used it the most in helping create written content really quickly. So what I would...
So ChatGPT is the main tool, or other tools as well?
Yeah, I use ChatGPT the most. There's quite a few now. Google has one called Bard. There's another one called Anthropic. Their model is called Claude. There's like a new one that gets built every single day. Then there's also tools like specifically AI tools for coding. Like there's one called GitHub Copilot, like runs in your editor when you're typing code and it suggests the next line of code for you. So you're just writing along and then you hit tab and you accept the new code that gets put in.
So it's similar to like Google for the
Google Docs.
Yeah. Or like email. My email does that. It's half the time it suggests weird things, but sometimes it's helpful, you know.
100%. So I've actually used AI to help create more content faster. Like sometimes I'll turn around a piece of content really quickly because I'm able to give a prompt to a large language model like ChatGPT, and I've kind of got the wording down so I know how to get a good output. I'll say, you know, produce it in this format, you know, it should be concise, it should be to the point, like break it up into X paragraphs, done. And I like drop in some information, I give it my rough draft or whatever, and it saves me a bunch of time. I just do a manual edit over it. So that's one thing that's helped. One thing that's been hard, I would say, is when it produces content that needs, it's like 98% there, but the 2% is actually very wrong. It's like just like a fundamental misunderstanding of what the thing does, which is why there still has to be this kind of manual human review of whatever it's generating. Otherwise you could you could post something that actually completely misses the mark. You don't want to just automate that, entirely.
Sure. Yeah. Cause I think especially for me on my end, like, the written stuff's been huge. Like there's a plugin for Chrome that I just got, I think last week, that it'll read the title and then scan the transcript and give you like an overview, show notes, and a blog post on a YouTube video. Life changer, right? It's like now I can literally two clicks or so and then get, like you said, the 90% of what I need to turn into a blog post, do whatever, especially with the podcast stuff. That's super huge to help speed things up. I think it's pretty crazy, but it will be interesting to see. There's a like, yes, AI is a tool, but also the skill set of prompts. I'm gonna have to get some of your prompts that you like. What do you say to this thing to give it? Cause I've tried like putting things into ChatGPT and it just doesn't give me what I'm looking for. So it's almost like learning how to search well on Google search, like it's like watching when I was a teenager and my mom's like trying to Google and she'll type out what is the right way. It's like a full question. Like, no, mom, type in like the 3 keywords. And then, it's learning the language of the machine, which is kind of an interesting thing to learn too. So I think that'll be kind of cool to see the impact that it has. But overall, you said, cautiously optimistic about AI.
Cautiously optimistic. Okay. Overall, a net good though.
Sure. Kind of switching gears back, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you went from, like you said, traveling the world. You were living like downtown Des Moines, doing all the stuff, to now you've like relocated to the suburbs or the country, if you will, and you're doing this remote work. How's life changed for you and kind of in that process, and good things that have kind of made you who you are now compared to who you were like 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
When I decided to do remote work full time, I was really nervous that either one, I was going to hate it, or two, I was just going to, lose my mind working from home all the time. And pairing that with also leaving downtown, which I had been there for 6 years. And, my wife, Allie, had also been downtown for about 6 years too. And us both deciding to move to Granger, move out into the country, get a house, and have more space, but also be more secluded in a lot of ways. I was worried about that as well too. It was like a pretty big change kind of happening around the same time. And looking back on it now, I think overall it's been pretty good. I now value having the silence and the space to have my own office and to be able to really go into work mode and focus without distractions and working from home a lot. Like there's a certain type of work that I get done really well in that environment. There's another type of work where I like to be around people. I like to collaborate, and I still try to get in person with some of my coworkers every now and then to do that. I travel probably about once a month. So that's still good to have, but there's a huge chunk of the work that you can just do from home. And then when you're done for work, it's like, oh, I'm already here. I'm already close to home. And especially after doing, commuting for a lot of years, getting rid of that was a massive win in terms of time back that I can go spend working out, or I can go spend just doing other things in my life right now.
Sure. Because how do you detach? Do you have a laptop that you can go anywhere in the house, or is it like shut the door on the office and it's over? Like, how do you mentally detach so you're not answering Slack messages at 11 p.m. and kind of detach from that?
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie, I'm not the best at this. I think I'm still trying to get better at setting the boundaries between when work is on and when work is off, especially working for a global company, even just like across the US time zones. Like if I wake up and it's, 9 a.m. Central Time, but I've got coworkers in Europe, like they've already been cranking out stuff for half of a day. And then when it's like, I'm trying to eat supper, it's 4 p.m. in San Francisco. So there's still people who are definitely still at work trying to get things done. So it's mostly self-regulated, and I think I've got better about it over the years, but I'm not perfect yet.
Sure.
Still working on it.
Sure. Because I know, like for myself, like I swore I'd never work from home until COVID happened, and I was like, this isn't as hard as I thought.
Same.
Because I'm a very social person, so I'm like, I couldn't be like by myself. Now I literally lease a commercial space and don't talk to anyone all day unless it's on a Zoom call. And the only social interaction I get at work is if people come here to shoot or I go on location to shoot. So it's like. I think it's interesting where people will go with how work trends are going, and just, but I think just having that, so like you said, if you're traveling, you'll see your teammates in person, or you'll go meet a new team in a different location or a conference or whatnot. I think that kind of helps level it out. But it's interesting to see like how social behavior changes and stuff like that. Cause when I've been working all day and I come home, I want to talk cause I haven't talked to anybody. And my wife's a hairstylist, so she talks all day and she's introverted. So she's like, don't talk to me. I just came home, sit in a freaking silence in a closet by myself. So it's interesting like how people take that. Cause some people would you say you're more introverted or extroverted?
Yeah, more introverted than extroverted for sure, which it's weird. I feel like, to me, I don't know why there's such a negative connotation to the word introvert to me personally, but for some reason I've always felt that was like a negative thing.
Yeah.
And then as I've gotten older, I've kind of learned to embrace the part of me that is very introverted. But there are certain things that I'm very extroverted about that I really like to talk about. If it's a topic that I'm interested in, I can talk, I can talk somebody's ear off for a really long time. Basically, in growing up and getting older, I've basically realized that my introversion is just that I'm particular about the things I'd like to spend my time on. So if I'm talking about something I'm not very interested in, like I'm going to zone out. Like well, I'll see you later. Like I'm going to go do something else.
Sure. I think that's great. I think just to wrap it up here, I'd love to hear first, what are your plans for your career? Like the next 5-10 years, like what's exciting about you or what direction are you intrigued about? Mm-hmm. And then also on the personal side, like what are you looking forward to now that you're a country boy living out here in Granger compared to where things are going in your personal life?
Yeah. So next 3 to 5 years of my career, I'm pretty excited about seeing how I'll continue to grow as a leader in my role. I mean, I'm still learning new things every single day. So getting to know more about what it takes to build a really large company that has, some hopefully very successful employees and a successful product and successful customers. I've already learned so much in the 3 years that I've been at Versel, and I think there's a lot more opportunity to learn there as well too. So excited to continue there, developing, not only my individual skills, but skills for leading our teams. In terms of my personal life, excited for me and Allie to start a family here pretty soon. By the way, congrats.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Congrats.
Little girl coming in January.
Yes.
I think everybody, if someone's seen this by now, it's public knowledge. So
yes. Yeah, that's very exciting. So I'm excited for that next journey in my life. And it's nice that family's still around and in Iowa, so I get to spend time with them as well too. I still like living in Granger. It's nice living out here. I'm really happy with our house has been really great. So no plans to move yet, but Allie, being a real estate agent, she's always looking at interesting houses. And even the other day, she's like, "Oh, this house is so cool." I'm like, no.
Sure.
We were just settled down here. So I don't know. Who knows where we'll be at in 3 years, 5 years, but yeah, still liking how things are going.
Sure. And if anybody that I knew was going to pick up and move to another country on the drop of a hat, it'd probably be you. So you wouldn't surprise me if I saw a for sale sign in the front yard.
Man, Allie and I have definitely talked about it. Like we both really love Denver, and that's not even that far away, but
it's kind of like another country.
Yeah, it's kind of like another country. We every time we visit, we're like, why do we not live here? But it's just so compelling to be close to family. Moving to another country would be fun, just be difficult.
Sure.
but doable. At least for now, the way I've kind of decided to live my life is that I have my base here in Iowa, and then that's the steady constant. That's where my family's at. But then I just try to get out and travel as much as I can, and then I always have the steady base to come back to. I think the alternate or opposite of that, which a lot of people prefer, is like they made their base something that's unique and interesting and novel and different. And they're living somewhere that they've wanted to. And then every now and then they go back to their home and they go back and visit their family. And I think just because family is such a big part of my life, like it's been nice to do it in that order. So I'm still getting to do both as much as I can.
Sure. No, I think that's great. Just, and being knowledgeable about or aware of, hey, this is what I want to do. Because I think a lot of people, depending on their career path, they want to move to LA, and then they're like, oh, it's like my personality. Like I can never leave because this is like where I live and what I do. It's, instead of thinking, is this where I want to be? Or is this where I want people to perceive me a certain way or that type of thing. But I really commend you for having that presence of mind, but then also, being travel is a huge part of my life. How can I find a job and a living situation where I can do that and make it a part of my lifestyle where I'm not having to bank up PTO and take a 2-week vacation and then never go anywhere for the rest of the year, because that could just be exhausting too.
Yeah, and try to find ways to bring Allie along with me when we go places and integrate that into the rest of our life so that you're still getting to do both things. You're still getting to travel, you're still getting to spend time with family. Yeah, it's important to me.
That's cool. So awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah.
Where can people find more about you or Versel or any of the stuff that you want to share to the listeners?
Yeah, pretty much all my stuff is on leerob.io. So
Awesome.
all of my socials or all the videos I make or all the blog posts I've written, it's all there.
Sure. Yeah. And if you go find his YouTube channel and find the awesome vlogs from 10 years ago, there's some really cool stuff to kind of see all the places you've been. So awesome, man. Well, thanks for being on the show. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. My name is Ryan Snod at Rhymes with Odd, and you're listening to the Rhymes with Odd podcast. See ya.